Imagine waking up one morning, but something is different. The usual sounds of your neighborhood are gone, no cars honking, no distant sirens, no voices of people talking on their way to work or school. You look out your window and see cars stopped in the middle of the road, but no drivers. The world is completely, utterly silent. This isn't just a quiet morning, it's a world where every single human has vanished in an instant. All 7 billion of us, gone without a trace. What would happen next? What would become of the massive cities we built, the pets we left behind, and the planet we called home? In the first 24 hours after our disappearance, the most immediate changes would be the sounds, the lights of our civilization going out. The hum of electricity that powers our world would begin to fail. Most power plants need a constant supply of fuel. Most power plants need human oversight, coal-fired power plants, natural gas plants. Without people to feed them, they would shut down one by one. The world's lights would start to flicker out, plunging cities into darkness. Imagine New York going dark. Imagine Tokyo going dark. Imagine London going dark, lit only by the moon and the stars. This sudden loss of power would have cascading effects across the globe. Airplanes would continue flying until they ran out of fuel. Empty, unmanned control towers. They would eventually crash, creating scattered fires. Trains would coast to a stop. After 1 week without humans, the world would start to look noticeably different, especially for the animals we left behind. Inside our homes, pets like dogs would have become desperate. Inside our homes, pets like cats would have become desperate. Many would have found a way to escape, breaking through windows, or slipping through screens in search of food and water. Smaller dogs would begin to form packs. Many breeds of cats would hunt on their own, tapping into primal instincts. Larger dogs might struggle more, but the drive to survive would be strong. This would be the beginning of a great rewilding of domestic animals. The process would reshape the animal kingdom in our suburbs and cities. The Great Escape would not be limited to pets. In zoos and wildlife parks, animals would also begin to break free. Without humans, fences would eventually fail. Apes might figure out how to disable locks. Elephants might break down barriers. Elephants wandering out of a city zoo into the empty streets. Lions wandering out of the zoo into the empty streets. Zebras wandering out into the city streets. These escaped animals would suddenly find themselves in a new, unfamiliar environment. Some might thrive, others would struggle to adapt without zookeepers providing their meals. The urban landscape would become an unexpected new savanna. Meanwhile, the flooding of our cities' underbellies would be well underway. Subway tunnels in major coastal cities would be completely filled with water, turning into long, dark underground rivers. This water would begin to corrode the steel foundations of the streets and buildings above. On the surface, the lack of maintenance would become visible. Leaves piling up in the gutters, trash piling up in the gutters, storm drains clogged. The next time it rained, water would have nowhere to go. Widespread street flooding. Our once manicured cities would start to look messy and unkempt. Nature taking over. Out in the wild, animals would already be enjoying the new peace and quiet. With no cars, deer would venture into suburban areas, bears would venture into suburban areas, coyotes would venture into suburban areas. Animals could communicate over much larger distances without noise pollution. Whales would find their sonar is no longer jammed. Dolphins would find their sonar is no longer jammed. For the first time in generations, the natural world would be able to hear itself think, a welcome silence for wildlife everywhere. 1 month into our absence, the planet would be settling into a new rhythm. The initial chaos of failing systems would have subsided, replaced by the steady, quiet work of decay and reclamation. In our nuclear power plants, a major crisis would have been averted. Most modern reactors are designed with fail-safe mechanisms that would have automatically shut them down safely in the event of a power loss. However, the cooling pools where spent nuclear fuel rods are stored would be a different story. Without electricity to power the pumps that circulate cooling water, the water would begin to evaporate, leading to overheating, meltdowns, and the release of radioactive particles into the environment. This radioactive fallout would create exclusion zones, areas where life would struggle to survive for centuries. But beyond these isolated hotspots, nature would be thriving. Weeds, the pioneers of the plant world, would be growing everywhere. Dandelions, crabgrass. Thistles pushing their way through pavement sidewalks, roads. The perfectly manicured lawns of suburbia would be overgrown, and gardens would be a tangled mess of cultivated plants competing with opportunistic weeds. The green of nature would begin to speckle the gray of our concrete world, a sign of the slow but relentless siege to come. In the sky above, Another part of our technological legacy would begin to fall. Thousands of satellites orbit the Earth, but without human adjustments to their orbits, they would start to decay. Pulled by the Earth's faint atmospheric drag, their orbits would shrink until they re-entered the atmosphere. Most would burn up completely, creating spectacular but harmless shooting stars in the night sky. A few larger pieces might survive re-entry and crash to the surface, remote forest empty ocean. The silent ballet of our space junk would slowly come to an end. The structures we built would also show their first signs of serious weakness. Buildings are designed to shed water, but without maintenance, gutters would be clogged and small roof leaks would go unrepaired. Water would begin to seep into walls and foundations, a slow and silent destroyer. In colder climates, this water would freeze during the night and expand, creating new cracks and widening existing ones. This process, known as freeze-thaw, is a powerful force of erosion. It would be the beginning of the end for our buildings, as the very elements they were designed to protect us from would now become their undoing. After a full year without humans, the evidence of nature's return would be undeniable. The world would be a much greener place. The weeds that started as small sprouts would now be robust plants, their roots breaking apart pavement and foundations. In many areas, fast-growing trees like poplars and birches would have taken root in the soil that has accumulated on our roads and in our abandoned gardens. Fields that we once farmed year after year would be blanketed in wildflowers, attracting swarms of insects and the birds that feed on them. The air itself would be cleaner, with much of the smog and pollution we created having dissipated into the atmosphere or been washed out by rain. The animal kingdom would be experiencing a population boom. With no hunting, no traffic, and no habitat destruction, animal populations would rebound dramatically. Birds would find endless nesting sites in our empty buildings, their songs echoing through silent city canyons. Rodent populations like rats and mice would have exploded initially, feasting on leftover food, but now their numbers would be controlled by a growing population of predators like foxes, owls, and the newly wild domestic cats. The food chain, once heavily disrupted by human activity, would be re-establishing its natural balance in our absence. Our oceans would also be showing remarkable signs of recovery. Without the constant threat of industrial fishing, fish populations would begin to bounce back from the brink of collapse. Coral reefs, sensitive ecosystems that have been bleached and damaged by pollution and warming waters, would slowly start to heal. The noise from ships and seismic surveys would be gone, allowing marine mammals to navigate and communicate freely. The great whales, once hunted to near extinction, would reclaim their ancient migration routes, their songs filling the silent seas. The oceans would be returning to a state of health not seen in centuries. The changes would be most dramatic at the edges where city and country meet. Suburbs would be turning into young woodlands, with deer and other herbivores browsing on the lush vegetation growing in backyards and on golf courses. Rivers that were once channeled and controlled by concrete walls would begin to flood their banks, carving new paths and creating rich, fertile wetlands. These new wetlands would attract a huge diversity of life, from amphibians to waterfowl. The world a year after us would be messier, wilder, and more vibrantly alive than the one we left behind. 100 years after the last human disappeared, the world would be almost unrecognizable. The great cities of the 21st century would be ruins, consumed by forests. The relentless cycle of water ice and plant growth would have brought down most modern buildings. Steel, the skeleton of our skyscrapers, would have rusted and weakened. The glass and steel towers that once defined our skylines would have collapsed into piles of rubble, which would now be covered in moss, vines, and even large trees. The streets would be gone, buried under a thick layer of soil and humus, transformed into forest floors. A walk through what was once downtown Manhattan would now be a hike through a dense, hilly forest. The domestic dogs we left behind would have either gone extinct or been absorbed through interbreeding with their wild cousin, the wolf. The result would be a new, robust canine predator, well adapted to this new world. Domestic cats would have given rise to a super predator, a formidable hunter that would have a major impact on bird and small mammal populations. The escaped zoo animals that survived would have established breeding populations in unexpected places, perhaps tigers stalking the new forests of the American South or parrots flocking in the ruins of London. The vast amounts of plastic we created would still be here. Plastic bottles, plastic bags, plastic toys. They would be broken into smaller and smaller pieces but never truly gone, forming a distinct layer in the soil, a future fossil record of our time on Earth. Similarly, certain chemical pollutants would persist in the environment for centuries, but for the most part, the planet's own cleaning systems, rain, bacteria, and sunlight, would have scrubbed the world clean of our most immediate pollution. After 10,000 years, almost every trace of our civilization would have vanished. This span of time is long enough for ice ages to come and go, for mountains to erode, for rivers to carve new canyons. The forests that consumed our cities would be ancient and mature, showing no sign that a metropolis ever stood there. The rubble of our buildings would have been ground down into soil and sediment, even the concrete and the steel. A future geologist studying the rock layers might find a strange stratum containing unusual concentrations of metals and plastics. The only clue: a technologically advanced species once lived here. The only structures that might survive in some recognizable form would be those built from solid stone with no internal metal supports. Think of the Great Pyramids of Giza or the statues on Mount Rushmore. These massive stone carvings could endure for tens of thousands of years, though heavily weathered and eroded. Wind and rain would soften the faces of the presidents, plant roots would pry apart the great stones of the pyramids. They would stand as silent, enigmatic monuments, their original purpose lost to time, much like Stonehenge today. Our impact on the animal kingdom would have left a permanent legacy. Supercats descended from our pets, wolf-dog hybrids, established species, integral parts of their ecosystems. Introducing plants to new continents, introducing animals to new continents would have created novel ecosystems around the world. Some of our creations, like hardy crop plants, might still exist in the wild, forever changing the botany of continents. The world would not have returned to how it was before us. Instead, it would be a new kind of wilderness, shaped by our brief presence. Even our most persistent pollution would have largely disappeared. Radioactive hotspots from melted down plants would have cooled to safe levels. The vast islands of plastic would have been broken down by sun and by waves into microplastics, which would settle into ocean floor sediments, becoming part of the geological record. The atmosphere would have returned to a pre-industrial state, the carbon dioxide we pumped in reabsorbed by oceans and by forests. The planet's climate would be governed once more by long-term natural cycles, not the actions of a single species. In a world without people, the animal kingdom would not just recover, it would flourish in ways we can hardly imagine. With humans and our vast agricultural lands gone, habitats would expand on an enormous scale. The Great Plains of North America would once again be home to massive herds of bison, millions strong, their migrations shaping the very landscape. In their wake would follow predators like wolves and grizzly bears, their populations restored to natural levels. The entire continent would revert to a dynamic wilderness, a complex web of life operating without human interference, a scene not witnessed since before the first humans arrived. The ecological niches once occupied by humans would be up for grabs, potentially leading to fascinating evolutionary developments. Over thousands of years, some species might even develop greater intelligence. Could primates like chimpanzees or bonobos eventually step into our shoes? Perhaps octopuses in the oceans, already known for their problem-solving skills, would evolve in new directions. Without the overwhelming presence of human intelligence, the evolutionary stage would be set for another species to potentially develop complex societies, tool use, and perhaps one day, self-awareness. The story of intelligence on Earth might not have ended with us. The very shape and size of animals could change. The era of megafauna, giant animals like mammoths and giant sloths, largely ended with the rise of human hunters. In our absence, the evolutionary pressure that favored smaller, more elusive animals would disappear. Over millennia, animals could grow to giant sizes once again. Imagine elephants in Africa and Asia evolving to become even larger, or the descendants of escaped cattle in South America growing into massive bison-like herbivores. The world could once again be a land of giants, a return to a prehistoric scale of life that our own ancestors helped to eliminate. This reborn animal kingdom would be richer and more diverse than the one we know today. New species would evolve to adapt to the novel ecosystems created in the ruins of our world. The lines between continents, which we blurred by transporting species across oceans, would lead to unique hybrid ecosystems. Australian marsupials might establish themselves in Asia, while North American predators could find new homes in Europe. The planet would become a giant evolutionary laboratory, mixing and matching life in new and unpredictable ways. The Earth without us would not be an empty world but a world teeming with a wild, vibrant and ever-changing tapestry of life. This journey into a world without us more than just a captivating fantasy, it serves as a powerful, humbling mirror reflecting our true place on this planet. The story of Earth's rapid recovery makes one thing startlingly clear. The planet does not need us. Nature would not just survive our disappearance, it would thrive erasing our legacy quickly. The forest would reclaim our cities, the oceans would cleanse themselves, life would flourish in our stead. This should not make us feel insignificant, it should fill us with responsibility. We are the only species that can understand our impact and therefore the only ones who can choose to change it. The air would clear without our pollution. The water would clear without our pollution. This shows the damage isn't necessarily permanent, but only if we act. Animals reclaim habitats, reminding us we share this planet, not own it. See the world not as a resource to exploit, but as an interconnected system to protect. An Empty Earth is a story about hope demonstrating nature's capacity for healing. Small efforts matter: planting a tree, reducing waste, protecting a local habitat. Our future needn't force a choice between civilization and a healthy planet. We can find balance, be gardeners instead of conquerors. Picturing a world without us teaches how to live now. We are part of nature, not apart from it. The fate of countless species, the health of the oceans, the stability of the climate, all are in our hands. We are the stewards. The choice is ours. Continue toward erasure or live in harmony so both humanity and a healthy Earth endure.